The ice does not sit still. It looks frozen. It feels eternal. But deep beneath Antarctica, the ice is always moving, slowly, relentlessly, like a living thing pressing down on whatever lies below it. And pressure reveals secrets. Long before anyone dared to imagine structures or anomalies, scientists noticed something unsettling. The ice above certain regions behaved differently. It flowed faster. It buckled. It thinned in places where it should have been thick and stable, as if something warm, something active, was pushing up from below. At first, the explanation was simple. Heat from Earth's interior, geothermal activity, normal, boring geology. But Antarctica refuses to be boring. Because the heat wasn't spread evenly, it was concentrated, focused, almost precise. And when radar was aimed at those hot zones, the reflections came back wrong. Too clean, too organized. Ice usually scrambles radar signals. Rock scatters them. Water absorbs them. But in these regions, the signals returned sharp, deliberate, structured, as if the waves had bounced off surfaces that were flat, or angled, or shaped, surfaces that shouldn't exist beneath 4 kilometers of ice. This is where the unease began to grow, because nature rarely builds straight lines. And Antarctica, of all places, should be the messiest geology on Earth. Instead, something down there looked intentional. The deeper the scans went, the stranger it became. Below the ice, below the lakes, below the ancient mountains, scientists detected voids, not caves carved by water, not gaps created by melting, but spaces, large, stable, and oddly regular, where radar signals simply vanished and reappeared on the other side. Empty volumes where rock should be, hollows the size of city blocks, and those voids sat beneath regions that gravity maps flagged as abnormally dense, as if heavy material surrounded lighter, empty space. That combination is rare. Heavy shell, hollow interior. It is not how normal geology behaves. It is, however, how engineered structures behave. No one said that out loud. Not officially. But the data didn't care what anyone was comfortable saying. It simply existed. As the mystery deepened, attention turned to Antarctica's volcanoes. Most people imagine Antarctica as dead and frozen. But beneath the ice lies one of the largest volcanic regions on Earth. Over 100 volcanoes, some dormant, some active, some unknown. And here's the unsettling part. Several of the strongest heat signatures, the same places with strange radar reflections, sat directly above volcanic systems that were not erupting, but were still producing steady heat. Controlled heat, not explosive, not chaotic, as if something was regulating it. Volcanoes don't regulate themselves. They build pressure, they release pressure. They do not hum quietly for thousands of years. Unless something is tapping into that heat, something using it. As scientists tried to model these systems, the numbers refused to cooperate. The heat flow was too efficient, the distribution too clean, the ice melt too localized. The models failed again and again. And when models fail, scientists dig into history. That's when Antarctica's past began to look less empty and more unsettling. Because Antarctica was not always isolated. There was a time when it was connected to the rest of the world, both physically and biologically. Fossils found beneath the ice show ancient forests, tree rings indicating warm seasons, and plant life that should never have existed so close to the South Pole. Animals once walked here. Life thrived here. And where life thrives long enough, intelligence eventually follows. That doesn't mean advanced civilizations. It means presence, time, opportunity, and Antarctica had all three. As the planet cooled and ocean currents locked the continent in ice, everything changed fast. Sea levels dropped, temperatures collapsed, ice advanced like a wall. Anything living there had only 2 options: leave or hide. The idea sounds dramatic, until you consider what humans already do. We build underground. We seek geothermal heat. We hide from hostile environments by going below the surface. And we do it with far less technology than a hypothetical ancient culture with thousands of years of adaptation might have possessed. Again, no one claimed this happened. But the data made it hard to rule out, especially when one region beneath the ice revealed something even stranger. A massive subglacial plateau, smooth and elevated, surrounded by sharp drops, almost like a foundation carved into the continent itself. Natural explanations struggled here. Erosion didn't fit. Glacial movement didn't fit. Volcanism didn't fit. The shape was too clean, too isolated, too intentional. It sat there like a scar in the rock or a base. And that raised another uncomfortable issue. Why can't scientists just drill down and look? Because Antarctica is protected by international treaties. Because drilling risks contaminating ancient ecosystems. Because the ice sheet itself is dangerously unstable in key areas, and because some regions are quietly classified as restricted research zones. Not forbidden, just delayed, studied from afar, watched, which only fuels speculation. Because if the findings were ordinary, urgency would be low, but urgency exists. In whispers, in closed-door conferences, in funding requests that never make headlines. And while scientists debate, the ice keeps moving. Cracks form where none existed before. Lakes drain suddenly into darkness below. Radar signatures shift slightly, as if something beneath is responding to pressure changes above. That idea makes people deeply uncomfortable. Because rocks don't respond. Structures do, systems do, and systems imply purpose. Then there is the signal problem. In certain Antarctic regions, instruments pick up faint electromagnetic disturbances. Nothing dramatic, nothing dangerous, but persistent. They don't match known solar activity. They don't align with storms. They don't behave like random noise. They pulse, slowly, regularly, too slow to be communication, too steady to be interference, like a machine left running on minimal power. Again, no conclusions were drawn, but questions multiplied. Why here? Why under the ice? Why preserved so perfectly? And why does Antarctica remain the least explored continent on Earth, despite decades of technological advancement? The answer most people accept is simple. It's too cold, too remote, too expensive. But history shows something else. Humans have always gone where curiosity pulls them, to deserts, to oceans, to space. We do not avoid mystery, we chase it. Unless something tells us not to. Antarctica feels less like a frontier and more like a vault. A place sealed not just by ice, but by caution, by rules, by hesitation. And hesitation in science usually means one thing: there is something at stake. As ice sheets thin and climate shifts accelerate, parts of Antarctica will eventually reveal what they have hidden for millions of years. Not all at once, not dramatically, but piece by piece. A reflection here, a void there. A heat signature that refuses to fade. And when that happens, the question won't be whether something strange lies beneath the ice. The question will be whether humanity is ready to understand it, because Antarctica does not feel empty anymore. It feels occupied by silence, and silence, when it lasts too long, is rarely natural. It is waiting. The deeper scientists looked, the less Antarctica behaved like a dead continent. It behaved like something paused, not abandoned, not destroyed. Paused. Beneath miles of ice, pressure builds slowly. Ice moves like thick glass, crushing everything beneath it, except in certain places where it doesn't. In these regions, the ice seems to hesitate. Flow slows. Thickness stabilizes. Cracks curve around invisible boundaries, as if the ice itself is avoiding something below. That behavior has no simple explanation. Ice does not dodge rocks. Ice does not reroute itself around mountains. Ice crushes everything equally. Unless heat rises in precise columns, unless solid barriers resist pressure, unless something underneath changes the rules. When NASA's instruments map these areas over time, the patterns repeated, year after year, satellite after satellite. The anomalies didn't drift, they didn't blur, they didn't disappear, they stayed fixed, as if anchored to the continent itself. And that's when the focus shifted from what Antarctica was to what Antarctica might have been. Long before ice sealed it shut, Antarctica sat closer to the equator. It shared climates with regions that today support dense forests and complex ecosystems. This wasn't speculation. Pollen trapped beneath the ice proves it. Tree fossils confirm it. Sediment layers tell the story clearly. Antarctica once had rivers, not meltwater streams. Actual river systems, wide, branching, persistent, carving valleys deep into bedrock. And rivers do something important. They support long-term settlement. They create stable environments. They attract life. When radar traced these ancient riverbeds, something unexpected appeared along their paths. Interruptions. Places where the river seemed to vanish, then reappear downstream. Not gradual fades. Abrupt stops. As if something blocked the flow. Rock slides don't do that cleanly. Tectonic shifts leave chaos. But these interruptions look deliberate, like barriers placed across waterways. Barriers that still exist, buried, frozen, preserved. As scientists overlaid river maps with gravity anomalies, the match was unsettling. The same locations, again and again. That's when Antarctica stopped being just a geological mystery. It became a historical one. Because rivers don't stop flowing unless something makes them stop. And then there was the depth problem. Some radar returns came from far deeper than expected, deeper than normal crustal features, deeper than known volcanic chambers. Signals bounced back from depths that should have absorbed them completely, which means whatever reflected them was solid, dense, and large. In some places, reflections stacked, layer upon layer, suggesting multiple levels of material separated by empty space. That is not how nature builds underground. Nature compresses, nature collapses, nature fills voids, but layered cavities suggest design, containment, internal structure. No one published those words, but they didn't need to. Anyone who understood the data felt it, a quiet discomfort. Because if something structured exists beneath Antarctica, it means one of two things. Either Earth is capable of creating order far beyond what we understand, or something once created order there. And then the seismic data arrived. Every time Earth trembles, even slightly, seismic waves ripple through the planet. They bend, they slow, they reflect. By studying how these waves move, scientists can map what lies underground. And beneath Antarctica, the waves behave strangely. In some regions, waves accelerated as if passing through ultra-dense material. In others, they slowed abruptly, as if entering empty space. These shifts occurred too suddenly, too sharply. Rock transitions are gradual. These were not. It was as if the waves were encountering walls, boundaries, edges. That realization forced a difficult conversation, because walls imply separation, inside and outside, and Antarctica had no business having either. As researchers struggled to explain the data, attention turned to something even older than rivers, the bedrock itself. Parts of Antarctica's crust do not match the surrounding geology of Earth. They are compositionally different, heavier, denser, almost imported. The idea sounds absurd, until you remember that Earth's continents have collided, broken apart, and reassembled countless times. Foreign crust exists elsewhere, but not like this. Not in isolated clusters, not buried beneath kilometers of ice, and not coinciding with heat anomalies, voids, and geometric radar returns. Everything overlapped. Everything pointed to the same locations, as if Antarctica was hiding not one mystery, but many, layered on top of each other. That's when some scientists began to ask a dangerous question. Not what is it, but why is it still intact? Ice is destructive. Pressure alone should have collapsed voids long ago. Heat should have melted structures. Tectonic motion should have shattered anything artificial. Yet whatever lies beneath Antarctica remains preserved, protected, which suggests it was either incredibly resilient or intentionally shielded. And that idea connects to the most unsettling possibility of all. That Antarctica is not hiding ruins. It may be hiding a system. Something designed to endure extreme conditions. Something meant to survive ice ages. Something meant to wait. Because waiting only makes sense if someone expects the future. As the ice slowly shifts, cracks open into darkness, some subglacial lakes drain catastrophically, vanishing overnight into unseen depths below. Water doesn't just disappear, it goes somewhere, and wherever it goes, there must be space to receive it. Space that remains open, space that doesn't collapse, space that behaves less like a cave and more like infrastructure. In the next part, the focus turns to the most disturbing signals of all. Signals that suggest activity. Not movement, not life, but response. Changes beneath the ice that correlate with changes above it. As if Antarctica is not just a frozen archive, but a locked door. And something on the other side can still hear us knocking. The ice remembers pressure. Every shift above Antarctica is recorded below it, pressed layer by layer into a frozen archive that stretches back millions of years. Scientists can read those layers like pages in a book: volcanic ash, ancient storms, temperature swings. But there are pages missing. Not eroded, not blurred, missing. In certain regions, ice cores show abrupt transitions where time seems to skip. Layers that should exist don't. Years vanish, centuries compress, millennia blur into nothing. At first, this was blamed on melting or deformation, but the pattern repeated only above specific underground anomalies, as if something below interfered with how ice accumulated above it, as if heat, vibration, or structural resistance subtly rewrote history from underneath. That idea unsettled researchers more than any radar image, because it suggested influence. Not passive existence, influence. And influence implies interaction. When satellites began monitoring Antarctica continuously, they noticed something else. The anomalies weren't completely static. They were stable, but not dead. Tiny changes occurred over time. Thermal output fluctuated. Electromagnetic noise shifted. Gravity signatures pulsed slightly, then returned to baseline. These were not dramatic events. They were subtle. The kind of changes you would expect from a system maintaining equilibrium, not from random rock. That distinction matters, because rocks don't correct themselves. Systems do. The data forced a re-examination of Antarctica's role in Earth's past, not just as a continent, but as a node, a place of convergence. Ancient myths from multiple cultures speak of a lost southern land, a place of origin, a place of knowledge, a place swallowed by catastrophe. These stories are often dismissed as metaphor, but myths don't need to be literal to be informative. They preserve memory, fragments of truth wrapped in symbolism. And many of those stories share eerie similarities. A great cold, a sudden shift in the sky, a land that vanished beneath ice or sea, survivors fleeing north. Geology confirms the timing. Roughly 12,000 years ago, Earth underwent abrupt climate upheaval. Ice sheets expanded, sea levels surged, ecosystems collapsed, civilizations elsewhere struggled to survive, and Antarctica, already drifting south, may have crossed a threshold, a point of no return. If something existed there before that moment, ice would have erased nearly all surface evidence. Nearly. But not what was buried deep, especially not if it was already underground. This is where speculation becomes unavoidable. Not wild speculation, logical extrapolation. If an ancient culture, human or otherwise, understood climate cycles, ice ages, and planetary instability, what would they do? They would go underground. They would choose geothermal regions. They would build to endure pressure, cold, and time. They would leave markers, not messages, but signatures. Density anomalies, thermal regulation, geometric structure, exactly what Antarctica shows. And then there is the silence. For decades, Antarctica has been blanketed in instruments, seismometers, radar arrays, satellites listening to every whisper of the planet. And yet, some signals don't get explained. Low-frequency hums that appear and vanish, vibrations too regular to be tectonic, too deep to be atmospheric. They don't repeat on human schedules. They repeat on geological ones, which makes them easy to ignore. Unless you're looking closely. And some scientists are, quietly, because when those signals spike, something else happens. Ice flow changes. Subglacial water shifts direction. Heat output stabilizes. As if a feedback loop activates. Again, no conclusions are drawn publicly, but privately the language changes. From random to correlated to responsive to what? The only variable changing is us, our satellites, our transmissions, our presence above the ice. That realization sparked an uncomfortable thought. What if Antarctica isn't just hiding something ancient? What if it is still aware of the surface world? Not conscious, not alive, but operational, like a machine left in standby, waiting for conditions to change, waiting for ice to thin, waiting for signals to return, waiting for a world ready or reckless, enough to reach down and touch it. The most disturbing part is not what might be under Antarctica. It's how well it has been protected. By ice, by treaties, by caution, by time. Almost as if the planet itself decided this was not something to be easily uncovered, because once ice retreats far enough, there will be no hiding it. Radar will sharpen, drilling will reach deeper, the voids will open, and humanity will have to confront a truth it has always struggled with, that we are not the first to shape this planet. And Antarctica, silent, frozen, patient, has been keeping the record. Not as a warning, but as a reminder that some things are buried not because they are gone, but because they are not finished yet. The ice above Antarctica is thinning, not everywhere, not all at once, but enough. Enough for the planet to begin loosening its grip on what it has hidden. As temperatures shift and pressure redistributes, deep systems that have remained untouched for ages begin to change their behavior. Subglacial lakes drain more frequently now. Ice shelves fracture faster than models predict. Heat maps flicker in places that were once stable. These are not dramatic signs. They are subtle, which is exactly how buried systems reveal themselves. slowly, reluctantly, when conditions forced them to adapt. One of the most unsettling developments came when long-term satellite monitoring revealed something no one expected to see. Synchronization. Thermal fluctuations in separate Antarctic regions, hundreds of kilometers apart, began to rise and fall together, not randomly, not seasonally, together, as if they were linked. Geology does not synchronize itself across vast distances without a common driver. Volcanoes act independently, tectonic stresses propagate, but not with precision. Yet here were distant hotspots behaving as one, which suggested connection, not surface-level connection, deep, buried, hidden beneath layers of rock and ice. If those regions were once part of a larger system, the ice may have simply sealed the entrances, not destroyed the pathways. And pathways matter, because they imply movement, flow, exchange. Then came the strangest detail of all. Some subglacial lakes, long thought isolated, showed chemical signatures that changed suddenly and then stabilized. Not contamination, not sampling error. The chemistry suggested fresh interaction with rock surfaces that water had not touched for millions of years, as if barriers had briefly opened and then closed again. Water moved, then stopped. That behavior should be impossible, unless the environment itself was responding to pressure changes, unless gates existed, not doors, not walls, but controlled thresholds. This is where the idea of Antarctica as a passive archive collapses. Archives don't adjust. Archives don't regulate. Archives don't respond. Systems do. And systems imply intent, not consciousness, but purpose. Something designed to maintain itself over long spans of time, longer than civilizations, longer than species, possibly longer than memory. The implications force scientists to ask a question they never wanted to approach. What if Antarctica isn't hiding remnants of the past? What if it is preserving something for the future? Earth has gone through ice ages before, mass extinctions before, catastrophes that reset life again and again. If a prior intelligence, human or otherwise, understood this cycle, survival would not mean dominance. It would mean endurance. Hide, wait, preserve, and Antarctica would be the perfect place. Remote, inhospitable, naturally protected, a place no one would search until technology caught up. Which brings us to the present moment. For the first time in history, humanity can see through ice, can map gravity down to fine detail, can listen to Earth's deepest vibrations, and what we are seeing does not look accidental. It looks prepared. That realization explains the caution, the delays, the hesitation to drill deeper. Because drilling is not just exploration, it is intrusion. Once you break through a sealed system, you cannot undo it. Pressure changes, temperature changes, balance collapses. Whatever has remained stable beneath Antarctica has done so because it has not been disturbed. Until now, and the most uncomfortable possibility remains unspoken. What if the system beneath the ice was never meant to be reopened casually? What if it was sealed deliberately, not to protect us from it, but to protect it from us? As ice retreats, time runs out, not for the thing beneath Antarctica, for our ability to choose how we meet it. Because soon, the question will no longer be what lies beneath the ice. The question will be, did we wake something that was perfectly content to remain silent? And when the ice finally gives way, will Antarctica reveal a dead past or an unfinished one? The ice will not hold forever. That is the one truth everyone agrees on. Antarctica has survived in silence because the planet itself protected it. Ice thicker than cities, cold so absolute it erased motion, isolation so complete that even curiosity froze before reaching it. But protection is ending. And when protection ends, history resumes. What matters now is not what Antarctica hides, but why it was allowed to hide it for so long. Because nothing this complex remains buried by accident. As the final datasets came in, one conclusion became impossible to ignore. Whatever lies beneath Antarctica was not destroyed by ice. It was preserved by it. Ice did not crush it, did not collapse it, did not erase it. Ice sealed it, like a lid placed carefully over something valuable, or dangerous, or both. That distinction matters, because destruction leaves debris, preservation leaves structure, and Antarctica shows structure. The voids remain intact, the heat remains regulated, the anomalies remain stable, even after millions of years of pressure. That alone rewrites assumptions about Earth's past. It means something beneath the ice was built, or formed, to outlast catastrophes. And Earth has had many asteroid impacts, magnetic reversals, solar radiation spikes, rapid climate collapse. Life resets again and again. Civilizations, if they ever existed before ours, would not survive on the surface. But underground is different. Underground is timeless. That is where heat remains constant, where radiation fades, where impacts mean nothing. Which brings us to the final, unavoidable realization. If something intelligent ever wanted to ensure survival across planetary resets, Antarctica would be the last place you would look, and the first place you would choose. The continent sits alone, politically neutral, geologically ancient, naturally sealed, no borders, no cities, no memory, perfect. And that explains the unease surrounding Antarctica, why it is protected more strictly than any other place on Earth, why entire regions are off limits for environmental reasons, why drilling projects are delayed, redirected, or quietly canceled, why discoveries are released slowly, cautiously, wrapped in technical language that avoids imagination. Because imagination is dangerous when evidence begins to align, and the evidence is aligning. Heat where none should be. Voids where rock should exist, patterns where chaos should reign, responses where passivity should dominate. Antarctica does not behave like an inert continent. It behaves like a sealed system, and sealed systems always have a purpose. As ice thins and pressure shifts, Antarctica will begin revealing what it has hidden, not because it wants to, but because physics demands it. Water will flow where it never flowed, rock will crack where it never cracked, signals will strengthen. And once humanity sees clearly what lies beneath the ice, there will be no returning to ignorance. We will have to answer questions that shake the foundation of who we think we are. Were we truly the first to build, the first to understand cycles, the first to plan beyond extinction, or are we simply the next civilization to reach the surface, while something older waits patiently below? That possibility is what terrifies people, not aliens, not monsters, not science fiction. But the idea that intelligence is not rare, just cyclical, that civilizations rise, fall, and hide, and Antarctica may be the proof, not of visitors from the stars, but of something far more unsettling, that Earth has done this before, and whatever lies beneath the ice is not watching us with intent, it is watching us with familiarity, as if it has seen this moment before, as if it knows exactly what comes next. The ice is thinning. The silence is breaking, and Antarctica, frozen, patient, and ancient, is finally running out of time to keep its secret. The only question left is this: when the truth fully emerges, will we recognize it, or will we realize too late that we were never meant to find it at all? If this story made you pause, if it made you question what lies beneath the world you walk on, stay curious, because the planet still has secrets, and some of them are waking up. Before there were cities, before there were borders, before there were names for continents, there was ice. Not the kind that melts with the sun, not the kind that cracks and disappears, but ice so ancient, so heavy, so silent, that it erased history itself. At the bottom of the world lies a continent no one truly owns, a place humans arrived last and understand least. Antarctica, a land buried beneath miles of frozen time. And for most of history, we believed there was nothing there to find, just ice, rock, cold. But when modern instruments finally learned how to see through that ice, when satellites began listening instead of looking, they found something that didn't belong. Something that wasn't random, wasn't chaotic, wasn't natural. NASA called it an anomaly. But anomalies are just mysteries we are not ready to name. And the deeper we looked beneath Antarctica's ice, the more it felt like the continent was not empty. It was sealed. Antarctica has never been loud. It does not announce itself. It does not warn. It does not explain. It waits. While civilizations rise and fall above it, while oceans shift and climates change, while history forgets and rewrites itself, whatever lies beneath the ice remains, unbroken, undisturbed, patient. Perhaps it is nothing more than geology we don't yet understand. Or perhaps it is proof of something far more unsettling. That intelligence does not always disappear when civilizations end. Sometimes it prepares, sometimes it hides, sometimes it builds not for dominance, but for survival. The ice is thinning now, and when Antarctica finally reveals what it has guarded for so long, we won't just be discovering something beneath the ice. We'll be discovering something about ourselves, about how fragile history really is, and how many times this planet may have already told the same story, only to erase it again. If the silence beneath Antarctica could speak, it wouldn't ask to be uncovered. It would ask one question: are you ready to remember what was buried on purpose?